9:45 p.m. on Mother's Day in Campbell Hall at Fordham University. Unusual, right? But the reason is the third straight NCAA appearance, the third straight Atlantic 10 title for the Fordham Rams. 5 out of 6 years they're going to head to the NCAA tournament. We'll know Fordham's fate in anywhere between 15 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes as the NCAA selection show set to get underway at 10 p.m. Drew Casey, he's Matt Morrow, and Matt, this Fordham team, the 3 seed in the A-10 tournament, ran through everybody 4-0, and they're going back to the dance.
Well, this is a team that was close to getting the bye into the A-10 tournament, but they didn't get it. Turns out they didn't need it. Whoever seed they ended up facing ended up having success. You get to that final against Dayton, and if you lose that first game, they even had that safety net of playing a second game immediately after. They didn't need it. Rachel Gillan goes the distance. She's the most outstanding player of the Atlantic 10 tournament, and the team, as you said, their third straight Atlantic 10 tournament, going to their third straight NCAA tournament, 5th in 6 years. And this team hadn't been to the NCAA tournament until 2010. Bridget Orchard, the rock of this team, the leader of this team, is the head coach, obviously has done such a great job here at Fordham. And this year, just another example of the success that this program has gone under Bridget Orchard.
You look back to the Atlantic 10 tournament, 4 games, 4 days. They didn't need to play 2 games in one day. Wednesday, they play St. Bonaventure, the 6th seed. They beat them 5-1, then they beat St. Louis the following day. The same score, 5-1. The Bronx School doing a little Bernie Williams impression, if you will. They win 4-2 against George Mason on Friday, and then they only need to play 1 game against the number 1 seeded Dayton Flyers. They win that one 8-2, a big grand slam from Rachel Gillan to cement that one, an 8-2 victory for them. And Matt, 4 players on the all-championship team. Rachel Gillan, Cora Ianniero, Lindsay Mayer, and Sydney Canessa, all garnering all championship honors.
When we look at Canessa and Mayer, Canessa 5 of 15, Mayer 6 of 15. Ianniero goes 5 of 11, 4 extra base hits in the tournament. But Gillan, again, not to just completely beat a dead horse here, but you can't not talk about her. She goes 3-0 in the circle. That grand slam in the final part of the 8-2 win over the number 1 seed Dayton. She had a terrific tournament, but like you say, you get 4 players on that all-tournament team. You obviously went pretty deep in the tournament, and obviously this team, they win it all, and they're going to the NCAA tournament.
In the NCAA tournament, like we said, the 5th appearance out of 6 for the Fordham Rams squad. 4-8 in the NCAA tournament. The current class 1-4 in the NCAA tournament. So looking to make some noise, filling up here at Campbell Hall. And Matt, you know, a team, really, it just means a ton for this Fordham program in the Atlantic 10 doing all these winning championships here.
Absolutely, and like we just mentioned, Bridget Orchard has come in and made this program what it is, 504 victories in her time. And look at the recent history. It's 2010, 2011, 2013, and 2014. This will make it 2015. And so this team has obviously in the recent years done such a terrific job to become a real force here at Fordham. You know, you look at one of the players who came this year, Lindsay Mayer, Rachel Gillan, who we've obviously been talking about in the first few minutes. These are players who come in from other programs, from bigger conferences, from the ACC, from Virginia, and they come here to play because they know that this is part of the vision. They know that this is part of the new program here at Fordham over the last half decade. This is a team that's capable and now has consistently gotten to the NCAA tournament. They were not bothered by the fact that they didn't get a bye here in this A-10 tournament. They didn't need it, and like we said before, they didn't need that second safety net game on the final day. They take down the number 1 seed Dayton 8-2 in that final. Gillan does it in the circle. She does it in the batter's box. But this whole team has really shown what kind of a program Fordham has developed here. When we talk about it, 5 tournaments in 6 years now, 3 straight Atlantic 10 titles. Not just 3 straight appearances in the championship game, 3 straight Atlantic 10 titles. Shows what kind of force this team has become in Atlantic 10 softball.
Nearing 10 minutes until we get started with the NCAA selection show, and the 64-team field is revealed. We'll have Coach Bridget Orchard over in just a second to maybe preview on how the team has gotten to this point. The performance thus far has been incredible, 36-18 for this squad. 64 teams make the NCAA tournament, divided into 16 regionals of 4 teams each. They'll play a double elimination style bracket, and we do now have the Fordham softball head coach, Bridget Orchard. And before we talk about 5 of 6 NCAA tournament appearances, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, thank you. You can see them running around, right?
Yeah. We have to start right with the championship. A team, you guys come in as the number 3 seed, run through everybody. What worked so well up in Amherst over the 4-day championship run?
I think the girls were just peaking. They were focused. I think we just kind of had our goals set to win that championship, and they kind of knew we struggled early in the season. And I think they knew once we got the tournament, it was just win 1 game at a time and keep it rolling. And one thing I know, so we didn't get too excited after each win. It was like we took care of business, got the first win, got the second win, third win, and finally got the fourth win. But I don't think we really were celebrating until we actually got that last and final fourth win.
3 straight Atlantic 10 tournament wins. Does that play into it that you guys had done it with the same group essentially 2 years prior, back-to-back years, and you go into this third straight year? You don't want to go in overconfident, but how much does that help going in knowing that this is something you've already been capable of doing?
Absolutely. I think that was huge. I think our experience was huge, and I even talked to the St. Bonaventure coach after our game, and he kind of recognized that and said that's experience versus youth, and it absolutely was. I mean, we have kids that have been here, done that. It's, the stages they were on, they're used to that pressure, they're used to the experience, and also coming in, I think the 3 seed actually worked to our advantage because it did humble us a little bit. We got knocked down early in the season, and it kind of took that arrogance away from us, so I think that helped us going in, that we weren't looking past anybody, and St. Louis had beat us twice, Staten had beat us twice, so we were pretty much locked in, focused, and we weren't taking anybody lightly, and we were ready to kind of prove that we could play how we could play.
Coach, having to play maybe that extra game compared to St. Louis and Dayton, at least at first, and then them falling into the losers bracket, it worked out a little differently. But throughout the tournament, except maybe for you guys, it seemed like defense was a problem for most of the other schools. Not so much for the Fordham Rams, though. And if you look at playing that extra game, do you think that contributes to maybe why we were so sharp, Fordham was so sharp on defense?
It definitely could help because that's kind of how we played it out. Obviously, you'd love to have the bye. We'd rather have taken the bye than play the extra game. But if you're going to play the extra game, we kind of played that up and said, hey, we got this extra game. We kind of get our feet wet. We do have some, getting our used to the field, getting used to fielding, getting used to hitting, get some extra reps in. So I think that helps and kind of get some nerves out. Even though we've been here before, it's still pressure, it's still nerve-wracking. So I think to get that game under our belt definitely helped us going in.
Rachel Gillan was the most outstanding player of this tournament. She did it both in the circle and in the batter's box. She had an unbelievable tournament. What can you say about the contribution she had this weekend and throughout the season this year?
It's been amazing. I think the biggest thing of our team, I say it kind of think, I feel like I'm saying it every year, is we have kind of a bunch of different players that step up at different times, and no different this year. Obviously, Rachel stepped up huge in that A-10 tournament, but all the whole season we've been using the 3 pitchers. I think Dalton pitched a great game against St. Louis with Patty helping us out there. So we don't have those two. We don't get where we're at. So I think that helps us a ton having her do that. But yeah, her hitting a grand slam just with the icing on the cake, that was the biggest thing, one of the biggest hits that she has had for us, and her stepping up. And again, she's a big time player, and they kind of come through in the big time games, and that's what she was able to do for us.
Coach, last question before you guys find out your fate. Having played such a strong schedule, especially out of conference, do you think that's going to help you guys come regardless of where you're seated across this country?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of how we set it up. We hope that sets us up that we kind of struggle early on, but we do play better teams earlier in hopes that when we get to the regionals that we can have a little bit of experience against some of those top-ranked teams. And some names that we'll see up there we can at least be familiar with a little bit, that we've seen them before, we've watched them play, give us a little bit of confidence.
Coach, thanks so much, and enjoy the selection, and we'll talk to you after.
Thank you.
See you in a bit.
So that's head coach Bridget Orchard, Matt, and over 500 wins for her. The 500th win comes the final regular season game, 4 wins in the Atlantic 10 tournament, 504 wins in 14 years. That's just incredible.
It really is. And when you look at, as we were mentioning, the NCAA tournament history of this program, it's no surprise to see that the 4 appearances prior to this year have all come with Bridget Orchard. And the reason this team has turned it around, this program has turned it around, is Bridget Orchard. And she does have a veteran group here, and she's brought them in. She's also brought players in from other programs, but she's built this into a program that players can see coming up out of high school, or players who are looking to transfer and say, you know what, this is a team that's consistently good, and they obviously have a good time. Obviously, you're going to be able to see some shots of the players here today. You can hear them in the background, and certainly when Fordham gets picked, because obviously we've got the automatic bid, just waiting to see where and when at this point, when Fordham does get picked and shown where Fordham falls in this bracket, it's going to be electric in here in Campbell Hall. I know
it's going to be.
You were trying to make this a fun nickname for other than Campbell Hall, but we don't really have to do too much work here to make it fun. This is going to be a group who obviously loves playing with each other. They play great softball, and they're going to have a ton of fun finding out where they're going to be.
And one of those players who will find out where they are headed, that's the Fordham Rams softball team, is Rachel Gillan. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us here. And
of course.
Going to start right with the Atlantic 10 tournament. You had an incredible performance both in the circle and at bat. What was working so well for you specifically?
I just tried to go out and play my game. I knew the team was behind me. I knew we were going to score runs. We're really clicking offensively right now, so I knew we were going to score. So I knew as long as I relaxed and went out in the circle and threw my pitches, I'd be fine.
Now, do you feel coming into this tournament that not getting the bye right away helped you guys? And obviously you don't want to have to play an extra game, but is there a little bit of a chip on the shoulder when, all right, we have to do a little bit extra? We know that we could be the best team in this tournament, but now we have to go out and show it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this during the regular season, we kind of stumbled a little bit with those series with St. Louis, the series with Dayton, dropping that game to Bonnie's. So we did have a chip on our shoulder. We kind of getting that extra game, having to play it, it was kind of a little bit of a motivating factor for us. We weren't the happiest about it, but we knew we would go out and take those games.
As one of the players who's one of the upperclassmen on this team, technically a redshirt junior in terms of NCAA eligibility, how do you and the other upperclassmen on this team expect to try and lead this team now into the NCAA tournament for the third straight season?
Yeah, our experience is huge. I was actually talking in my post-game at A10s about this. Our being here so many years in a row, the 3 years of A10s and going to NCAAs so many years, we have that experience. Even though personally I only have 1 year after redshirting and coming in and everything, but our senior class has more experience than I'd put them up against any senior class in the country with experience-wise. So I think that's really something that's going to help us and help us get to that final day of a regional.
Going into the tournament, did you guys feel like you had that experience, not just in the NCAA tournament, obviously, but 3 straight Atlantic 10 tournaments, and this is a program that it's just been recently that you guys have become an Atlantic 10 powerhouse. How much confidence does that give you going into the A10 tournament? Obviously, you had to play the extra game, but does that help as well, knowing that we've been in this exact situation 2 years in a row and we've come out on top?
It's huge. I actually said in our pregame, I give a little pregame speech every game. Kind of started at the beginning of A10s this year, and the first one that I said against Bonnie's is they've never been here. We own this tournament. So we definitely had that confidence going in that we've been there, we had that experience, we've done it all before.
Heading into the NCAA tournament, having played so many tough teams in terms of strength of schedule early in the season, do you guys think that will help you guys very much come wherever you're seated across this country?
Absolutely. We played with some of the best teams in the country this year. I mean, we took down Minnesota. We took down a really good South Florida team. We played with Missouri. We played with Tennessee. We know that we can play with anybody in the country.
Is there anything other than experience that you think that this team has gained over the last couple of seasons? Obviously, the results aren't there. You don't get out of the regionals the way you obviously want to. Is there anything you've taken from those experiences other than just being there before that you can say, okay, this is something that we can implement this year to our advantage?
I think it's just our mentality. In our pre-season meeting, we talked about getting to a super, how we can't get complacent, which is getting to regional. Winning the A10 is obviously our first goal, but at this point in kind of this dynasty that we're building, we're not complacent with just being at regionals and playing and saying we're there. Like, we want to go out, we want to win games, we want to get to the championship Saturday or Sunday, whichever day it is. We want to be there and we want to be competing.
Rachel, thanks so much. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And enjoy the selection.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's Rachel Gillan, most outstanding player from the A10 tournament. She'll have to be continuing her performance throughout, as she has been recently, if the Rams want to go far, possibly win a regional. You heard her talk about a super regional, not being complacent if you're the Fordham Rams. As about 2 minutes from the start of this selection show, what we'll do is we'll go through the bracket with you as it comes out. When Fordham is released, we'll do our best to preview some of their opponents. There'll be 3 of them that they could prospectively play. 64-team field, 16 regionals, 4 teams each. They play double elimination. The top team from each of those 16 regionals advances. Then a 2 out of 3 super regional as they term it with 1 team. And then it heads to Oklahoma City for the Women's College World Series, where it will be 8 teams, and again, a double elimination format, Matt. But this team, a team that is 4-8 in the NCAA tournament, so they can win games. It's not that the Atlantic 10 and the softball champion can't win a game once they get to the regionals, that is. They haven't won a regional. What does this softball team need to do to win a regional for the first time? I
think you heard Rachel say it. That mentality is so huge. Not just being complacent getting to the regional, like you just pointed out as well. If you go back to the first time this program made it 2010 at the Maryland Regional, they actually go 2-2, but you get 2 losses in that regional, and you're eliminated. Since then, 1-2, 1-2, and last year they dropped both games in the Florida State Regional. So obviously the experience they have and the mentality, this new mentality of not just being complacent, is definitely going to help this team out. And they're not just one of the most experienced teams in Atlantic 10 anymore. They're going to be one of the most experienced teams in the NCAA tournament, having gone 3 straight years out of the Atlantic 10. If you think of, if you want to call the Atlantic 10 a mid-major school, they're one of the top mid-major schools. If you can call them that, they're probably going to be one of the most, if not the most experienced team going into that. So if there's a team out of the big power conferences that you can look at, why not look at Fordham with that experience they have, but also the success on the field? playing against those top opponents early on, taking down a Minnesota, playing teams like that is going to be huge for the mentality of this team going in, because not only are they a group that's led by upperclassmen leadership, they're a team that's been there before and can see the results even this season.
10 teams Fordham has played that are expected to get into the NCAA tournament. Binghamton, St. John's, Longwood, Hofstra, Fresno State, Tennessee, Minnesota, Missouri, California, NC State, and Northwestern, sort of, I guess you could say, on the bubble. And Dayton, of course, in the Atlantic 10, didn't come out on top. Have a chance, unlikely for them to make the NCAA tournament, but having played maybe almost a sixth of the field, this Fordham team should come very experienced. As we're at 10 o'clock and the selection show is about to get underway here on ESPNU. But, Matt, it's a team that definitely can make some noise and go pretty far in this NCAA tournament.
They absolutely can, and it starts with the top players, really. I mean, Rachel Gillan, the most outstanding player of this tournament, but when you look at the other players, too, that made the all-tournament team, Sydney Canessa, Lindsay Mayer, Cora Ionira as well, those three players had terrific games with the bat. It's not just Rachel Gillan doing what she does on the mound. You talked about, with Bridget Orchard talked about it with us. Patty Maloney's done a great job filling in. Michelle Dobbin's been a very, very good starter as well when Rachel's not out there throwing. So this team has found other ways to do it. They've found a lot of different players. Ali Fragona came in and played some backup catcher in this tournament, played fantastic, coming in for senior leader Kayla Lombardo. So this is a team that can do this in a lot of different ways. And, again, that experience, that new mentality, and a lot of players. They're not just one or two players who lead this team. There's a lot of players who can get the job done here for Fordham.
Auburn, Florida, Michigan, and Oregon will be the top 4 national seeds. That's all we know. That came out at about 9:30 from the NCAA as they're introing the show now on ESPNU. We'll go through it with you. Let's go to the history for the Fordham in the NCAA tournament. In 2010, they were in the Maryland Regional and went 2-2, took down Maryland twice, and lost to Oklahoma twice. As it looks like they're about to set start here, as they're explaining the format, 64 teams make the tournament, 16 regionals, 1 through 4 there seeded, a double elimination format followed by the Super Regionals, 2 out of 3 series, and the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City starting on May 28th. Florida, the defending champion, the Gators from the SEC. Expect to see plenty of schools from the SEC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten in this tournament, the ACC as well. But one school we're concerned about is Fordham, as the Florida Gators are announced as the number 1 overall seed. We knew they'd be 1 through 4 somewhere. Gators, the defending champion, and 50-6 this season, Matt. So seems like maybe they should be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the top teams. They're all going to be from conferences like the SEC. So out of the top 4, you're going to have 2 of them, Auburn and Florida. It was just a matter of seeing who the number 1 overall seed was going to be. And now on the selection show on ESPN, ESPNU, showing the Florida Gators the number 1 overall seed, waiting to hear, just like Fordham is here in Campbell Hall. And like you said, 50-6 this season. So Gainesville Regional first announced, and it's going to be tough for the other 3 teams in that regional.
Florida A&M, 18-37, will be the 4 seed in that regional, playing on Friday. Florida Atlantic will also be in that regional, sticking with the Florida teams. Maybe they'll stick with the Fs. Maybe it'll be Fordham as they release the 4th and final team of the regional, and it's Hofstra. And you hear that reaction.
Yeah.
Here, as nearly a team that Fordham fell to. Some feelings about them in a game that was rain-shortened. So that's the first regional, Florida, Florida A&M, Florida Atlantic, and Hofstra. That'll be in Gainesville starting on Friday. Interesting there.
It definitely
not
is.
fans of Hofstra, I see.
Well, no surprise that Florida A&M has to take on Florida right away. They're an RPI in the 250s, winners of the MEAC, an under 500 record. Congrats to getting in, but it's going to be a tough road for them. And in Hofstra, like you said, a 7-1 loss on April 22nd, that at Hofstra in the rain-shortened game. So you think about how this goes geographical, that, could have been Fordham.
Notre Dame will take on Ball State. Notre Dame, the 16th ranked seed nationally. Northwestern will be in that regional as well, another team that Fordham played, lost earlier in the season, 7-2. And Kentucky will also be in that one, so 2 down, nothing for Fordham yet. We know they're getting in. Not the case for Dayton, who is sort of, I guess, on the bubble, you could say. So we keep track here as we go along.
We see it again there in the South Bend Regional, keeping it regional. Notre Dame taking on Ball State, another Indiana team, and then Northwestern and Kentucky keeping it in that Midwest region. Notre Dame, 40-13 this season, but so many good programs at the top of Division I softball. That gets you a 16th seed. They are going to be the seeded team in that regional, so they still have the best path in terms of getting out of their regional, but they're going to have to take on the Gainesville regional winner, and you would assume coming out of that is top overall seed Florida. But if somebody takes down Florida, you got to be worried about them too, because they went through the top overall seed.
Fordham assistant coach Laura Winter, her alma mater, Notre Dame, get a national seed. The 16th a national seed, so that's the final national seed as it goes down. As they'll take a break on the show for a little bit, and Matt, 2 brackets down, Fordham will not be going to Gainesville, and they will not be going to South Bend, Indiana, and that leaves plenty of other options open on the table. 14 more. We're not going to try and speculate, but some of the teams that Fordham has played, and we'll get in automatically based on winning their conference. Binghamton, a team that Fordham beat 6-4. St. John's, a team that Fordham beat twice, 3-0 and 8-0. They lost to Longwood out of the Big South. They won their conference 10-7. They lost to Hofstra, who we just saw get in, 7-1. And out of the Mountain West, they lost to Fresno State back in February, early in the season, in their first weekend of action. So they're 4-3, 3-3. Now, as Florida State gets announced, of course, that's the regional where Fordham was last year. See if they're heading back now, Florida State, in the Tallahassee regional. They'll host again at 45-12. They'll take on Dartmouth out of the Ivy League on Friday. Again, Fordham probably going to get a 2 or 3 seed, so we probably won't see them coming up against the number 1 seeded team. South Carolina also in that with Florida State and Dartmouth. Central Florida will also be in that regional as well. Fordham second or third seeded within a regional, not overall, just to clarify that.
So you wouldn't have to be taking on the seeded team right away. That would mean the 4 and the 1 of that regional would play each other. But obviously, you have to win a couple of games in the regional. You got to go through everybody, it seems. And this would have been an interesting scenario if Fordham goes back to Florida State. That would have been quite the storyline a year ago. They dropped both games against Florida State and South Carolina. So what a storyline that could have been if Fordham goes to the Tallahassee Regional for the second straight season. But I'm sure you talk about chip on the shoulder, not getting a bye in the A-10. Imagine the chip on the shoulder if you drop both games there, 6-1 the first one against Florida State, 5-4 against South Carolina to get knocked out of the tournament. Imagine the chip on their shoulder if they're in there instead of UCF. That would have been quite the storyline.
Tennessee, the next national seed in this tournament, another team that Fordham played with, losing 5-0 back in February.
Number 8 seed there. So they'll be in the Knoxville Regional.
They'll take on Longwood, another team that Fordham has played this season. Lost to them back early season 10-7 out of the Big South. So 2 teams maybe Fordham would like some revenge again. It's not going to be them just yet, as Virginia Tech in that Knoxville Regional, which is where Fordham assistant coach Smaricata is from. Utah will round out that regional, so
taking a little bit out of the
geography there. So that's the end of that one. 4 down.
I mean, once again, though, you're kind of almost at this point expecting there's a great chance Fordham could go up against a team they've already played this season. We talked about the storylines it could have been with going to last year's opponents. There's plenty of storylines to be had if Fordham ended up, say, a thing with Longwood, who they played, or teams like that. It's going to be very interesting to see if Fordham gets placed with a team they've already played this season or have some more recent history with. We talked about it. Probably not going to see another A-10 opponent. They probably wouldn't get placed together. Only 2 times has that ever happened that there's been 2 A-10 teams in the field. Last time was 2010 when Fordham made it for the first time. They were the at-large, or they got the at-large bid. They weren't the automatic bid. So, that doesn't happen that often. We're probably not going to see another A-10 team, but playing that tough schedule early on in the year, that's what it does. You might have a recent history with one of your opponents when you get there because you're playing the best of the best.
4 teams so far in the NCAA tournament that Fordham has faced. 4 regionals out of 16 regionals, 16 teams out of 64 announced. Fordham still waiting here at Campbell Hall. We're going to continue. LSU in the Baton Rouge regional, the number 5 overall seed, announced. anxiously waiting are the Fordham Rams. After winning the A-10 title for the third consecutive year, Texas Southern. Again, that's going to be in Baton Rouge. LSU out of the SEC. Nebraska will be team number 3 there. And waiting on the final team out of that regional. And Arizona State, the Sun Devils, not getting to host a regional this year, as they'll be in that regional. A tough one for LSU, as historically Arizona State has been a very good program.
And Drew, we still have plenty of time to go here. We're only a little over 10 minutes into the selection show on ESPNU that only started at 10 p.m., but you kind of get a little quiet here in Campbell Hall, very anxious. You know, a couple of years ago I was here witnessing this, and Fordham was in the first bracket, I think, the first or second regional that was put up on the screen, so didn't have too much time to wait and get anxious. You saw who we were playing right away, ended up going to the Oklahoma regional that year in 2013, and you found out quickly, and you didn't have time to be anxious and wait. I'm sure they've been waiting since they won the title, but now this is even more excruciating, having to go through all these teams. You know you're in. It's less excruciating when you know you're in, but having to wait and sit through all these teams, go through, saying, oh, are we going there?
But you know what this means, though, when they are announced.
Oh, it's going to be even better.
It's going to be even better. Arizona, Tucson regional, the 12th overall seed, 38-17. They will take on the 12 net overall seed out of the Pac-12, St. John's. The 4 seed. Reactions here as well, as Team Fordham has beaten twice this season. The second time very handedly, 8-0 in a run rule affair. New Mexico State will join that regional at 46-14. And the final team in Tucson will be Minnesota, another team that Fordham has played and another team that Fordham has beaten this season. So we'll go on.
That's a tough regional there, and you think about it's going to be the tougher regionals you think almost. They're all going to be tough, but it's going to be real tough.
I think that's a regional, though, Fordham would have liked to maybe been in.
Maybe, but when you think about it, 2 teams with 40 wins, and then Arizona is one of the teams with not 40 wins. They're the ranked team. Yes, they've already played St. John's twice, but listen, anywhere you go is going to be a tough draw. Exactly, it really is. I mean, you totally play St. John's, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. They've lost twice to you, and they got run-ruled in the last non-conference game of the season after going on a ridiculous streak through the Big East. They get a little bit brought back down to earth by the Rams. So, you know, it's, again, wherever they end up going, it's going to be fun. It's going to be tough, and there are going to be plenty of storylines to talk about. Now we're getting anxious.
We're getting anxious now. We're not even halfway
done.
Go
over all the storylines that could have happened. I can't wait to see what we actually get.
6 regionals down, 10 to go. Plenty of more teams to be announced here in the NCAA softball Division I tournament. And taking a little break from the reveal, let's head back to Fordham's NCAA tournament history, as they're going to do an in-depth look at Baton Rouge and Tucson on the NCAA selection show. This is where Fordham has gone. The Maryland Regional, the Penn State Regional, the Oklahoma Regional, and the Florida State Regional. 2-2 against the Maryland Regional in 2010. 2 wins against Maryland, 2 losses to Oklahoma. The Sooners probably going to get another seed in this one, as we're back in the Lafayette Regional, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. The 13 overall seed, 39-9 for them. Expected to get that. They'll take on Weber State, 38-17. Mississippi State will get involved in this one as well in Lafayette. And Baylor. And another regional with no Fordham yet. Matt, you wonder, we haven't really seen any regionals super close to us. Maybe Knoxville, probably not going to see a regional close to us. But the longer we wait, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the history again. Penn State doesn't feel that close to you, but that's the closest of late.
Would probably be the closest,
tie between Maryland and Penn State. Florida State, you got to go all the way down to Tallahassee. Oklahoma, you got to go all the way to Oklahoma, and you know that's not too. It's not too close. So you got to wonder how much of an effect that will have as well. You think you'd want to stay closer to home, but once you get there, it's all the same. You got to take on tough teams. You're going to have to take on tough opponents, whether it's the host or not. So, you know, at this point, again, you just feel the anticipation more and more.
Yep,
you could cut it with
certainly
a knife right now. here in Campbell Hall, and it's getting tense. I mean, they got the Auburn regional coming up.
Auburn 49-9, the 4th overall seed. We knew that coming in. They'd be in the top 4. Auburn out of the SEC. First SEC tournament title for Auburn. They're going to start with Tennessee Tech out of 32-26 for them. Anxious indeed here in Campbell Hall as Fordham continues to wait. Chattanooga 35-13. 2 teams from Tennessee will travel to Auburn, and will it be a team from New York? No, it will not. South Alabama. So that's another regional down.
Not exactly New York.
And we're halfway through. 4.5 complete. Or I should say 3.5 complete for softball. When we're headed to the bottom of the 4th.
Well, again, I mean, you could just see when you look out into the crowd while you read it off the screen, I have the luxury to just look out and see the faces. It's an interesting mix. You got some stoic faces who obviously just they want to find out, no nonsense right now. But there's some students in here, it's basically the softball team, who can't stop jittering around, can't stop wondering where they're going to go. They're giggly, happy, but at the same time, everyone's nervous in their own way here. Again, it's getting more and more quiet as the names get revealed, and then once the 4th team is revealed, there's a mix of a sigh of relief, like, okay, we can stop worrying for just a second.
They know they're in. They know they're in.
You're in, and then
but still,
a mix of and reacting to maybe a team that's been in there, and maybe they don't want to face, maybe they do want to face. It's fun to observe, but again, it's going to be the most fun to see once Fordham's name is finally called here on ESPNU to find out which regional the Rams will be headed to. We're going to see quite the reaction. On the screen here, we haven't seen too many terrific reactions because we got cameras on top seeds, on Tennessee, Florida. These teams, don't matter.
Did you see James Madison, who's sort of on the bubble of getting a national seed, so that's pretty close by. Virginia, you never know. Maybe Fordham will be able to play a little geographically close. They're going to take a break on the selection show for a couple of minutes halfway through. Fordham still awaiting their fate. 32 more teams will be revealed. The good news is, though, Fordham knows they'll be one of those 32 teams. Regardless of anything, Dayton doesn't have that luxury. Other teams in the A-10 or other teams that have not won their conference don't have that luxury. So it's a weird feeling, though. It's more of an anticipation anxiety.
It's not as excruciating, obviously, because you're in. It's just a matter of where you're going. And for the Atlantic 10, that's why the conference tournament is so big. When you talk about a team like Auburn winning it, Florida doesn't have to worry about going in. If Florida doesn't win their tournament, it's not a big deal because they're going in. They've had such a spectacular season. That's not the case in Atlantic 10 softball. Fordham has become somewhat of a powerhouse. They're trying to build this dynasty. It's 3 in a row here in Atlantic 10 play. But if you don't win the Atlantic 10 tournament, there's absolutely no guarantee that you're getting in. And as we've mentioned, only twice has it happened in the Atlantic 10 where a team gets in. Fordham did it once in 2010, and that was the most successful NCAA tournament they've had, their first ever appearance. But you can't rely on that. Obviously, the history of the Atlantic 10 shows that this is, for the most part, a one-bid league. That's why the Atlantic 10 tournament is so much fun. There's so much pressure on it. And, you have to go in and, a lot of times when there's a one big league like that, sometimes you hear about that's the national championship. But we talked to Rachel Gillan earlier. They can't have that mentality anymore. Not that they had that necessarily in earlier tournaments, but winning the A-10 tournament, while it's the first goal talked about in the offseason, is not the ultimate goal at this point of the year anymore. Just getting here and winning. Yes, you're probably going to be the only Atlantic 10 team getting in at this point, but that's not enough. It's not enough to get to the regionals anymore for the Fordham Rams. Once you get there 3 times in a row, you start to realize this is more business than just fun being here. And again, that's why Fordham has not had the success to get out of the regional, but you can't dismiss that new mentality that this team will have, that they belong here and they want to move past here into super regionals and obviously the College World Series.
36-18 for the Fordham Rams. Probably their biggest marquee win this season was against Minnesota, 10-5. They beat them back on March 1st. And a tight game against Missouri, who hasn't been announced, expected to be a national seed, also out of the SEC. They only lost to them 7-5 back on March 13th, and a slew of other teams. I've got it at approximately 10 with projections and sort of as teams that Fordham will have had played once their fate gets announced. So definitely the strength of schedule And the experience that Rachel Gillan and Coach Orchard talked about is going to be crucial for this team, and it's only going to help their cause.
And playing close games and even coming out with wins against those top teams, it comes in the early months of the season when Fordham doesn't even play a home game yet. They can't even practice outside here in the Bronx. If you're living anywhere near here over this winter, you understand why it was impossible to play any home games or practice outside here for the early months of the season. So, it's got to be a weird mentality for that as well, having to be on the road for so long to start this season. And you're playing the toughest competition, arguably, of your season. You're preparing yourself for the end of season play when you're going to play the best teams in the country. You're doing it right away.
Back at it, more fun. Oregon, number 2 national seed. Eugene, Oregon, as the crowd gets quiet. BYU will take on Oregon. The Cougars from Brigham Young. This one's going to start on Thursday. Fresno State involved as well at 40-14, a team that Fordham has also played this season. Will they fill it out with another team beginning with the letter F? No, they will not. North Dakota State.
A little bit more than a sigh of relief from Bridget Orchard after that. And listen, no matter where Fordham gets picked, there's going to be applause, there's going to be cheering, they're going to be excited to get started and get into playing. But that would be a very tough regional to go to, the Eugene Regional. Obviously, Oregon, 46-6 this season, the Pac-12 champs. This team is there's no messing around with the Oregon Ducks. But also, you've got a team in there, Fresno State, that, again, it was early in the season, but back in early February, they played that team in Tempe, Arizona. You lose 8-0. That'd be a really, real tough regional.
Here we go. James Madison is a national seed, the 15th national seed. Look out if they want to keep it on geography. 47-8. They'll take on Binghamton.
Sticking in New York.
If Fordham comes in this one, this could definitely be a winnable regional for this team, more so than the others. Team number 3 in Fordham. Fordham announced in the Harrisonburg Regional, they'll take on NC State. James Madison will be the national seed in that one. They'll take on Binghamton. Matt, pretty sure the Rams got to like that. The teams, they get to stay relatively close to home, and they get to play 3 teams, maybe not necessarily, actually, none out of the Pac-12, none out of the SEC. They've got NC State out of the ACC, but then Binghamton, James Madison, and NC State. At first glance, might have to like the draw here.
Well, at first, you're just relieved at this moment. We're going to get to talk to Bridget Orchard and see how much we like the draw here at Fordham. But, you're just relieved at this point to get that and relieved to get in and not, already knowing you're in with the automatic bid, but to know where you're going. I heard a voice. I couldn't pinpoint who it was yell out of the crowd. No trips. At least they're going to get to stay close here. And you got to think that traveling far, being out of the comfort zone, it's something you do early on in the season, but it's something that's very tough to do. It's not easy to go up and play tough opponents on the road consistently for the early part of the year. Now you get a chance to do it a little bit closer to home. And, again, teams that Fordham is also familiar with.
Teams that Fordham are familiar with, indeed, as they continue the selection show. Missouri's the 10th overall seed, but we'll shift to Fordham here. James Madison is going to be the host school. Harrisonburg, Virginia. NC State will be the first opponent for Fordham. NC State 35-20, 13-8 in the Atlantic 10, and a team that Fordham has seen already, a game that was a 5-0 win for NC State. They scored all those runs early in the game, then Fordham played even with them and out-hit them, actually. 6 hits in that game as head coach Bridget Orchard comes on over. Coach, at least from our perspective, I would imagine the draw is maybe pretty good for you guys, given what we just saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we played these teams before, so we at least have heard of them. We know where we're going. My hometown is Binghamton, so it's kind of ironic. It's pretty funny. Yeah, my parents actually still live up there, so Binghamton, we've faced them many a time.
Well, who are they going to be rooting for?
For us. But yeah, our NC State tournament this year was us, Binghamton, and NC State at NC State. So it's like kind of a combination of our preview of our tournament early in the season.
So going back to that, we'll start with NC State since they're the first team that you guys get, a team you lost to 5-0. But having played them has to be an advantage. What did you see from them in that first game?
I think the biggest thing with them, we gave up home runs early on. I think we gave up 4 solo home runs early in the game that we should have done the rest of the way. So it's, again, keeping the ball in the park against them and, getting on the scoreboard.
In other years, you guys have had to go pretty far. Most notably, Oklahoma is nowhere near the Bronx. James Madison, not as big a trip. So does that play any factor into it that these are all teams that are pretty local, so maybe you have a better idea of them? You've played 2 of them, and you don't have to go as far. You go so far early on in the year until you can get back home. Is there any factors that play in terms of not having to go as far for this regional?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that helps. I mean, just from a fan base, I think that's great for our fans and our family and stuff to be able to get there, being able to drive there instead of taking a flight, across country or, even going way down south. So definitely an advantage getting to play closer to home and kind of, like you said, a little more familiar with the area.
And going back to that NC State tournament, it's early in the year. The weather, if I remember correctly, wasn't great for NC State territory. The weather shouldn't be an issue in Virginia, at least in terms of the temperature. Everyone's a different team. How much better of a team do you think you are from the first game when you played NC State?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we've grown as a team, definitely have developed and have gotten a lot better as far as, just fundamentally we've gotten better, but also mentally we've gotten better and really grown and saw in different positions and we've changed some things up. So I think we're definitely better than we were at the beginning of the year.
Now, obviously, in that game, like you talk about, the early runs given up, but then you sort of play even with them the rest of the way. Obviously, a 5-0 result isn't what you want, but how much do you look back at a game like that, or just a game in general, when you've played a team already, but now you're going into the NCAA tournament? How much do you look back and look at some of the negatives, some of the positives, or is it more of just going in with a blank slate mindset?
Kind of like a little bit of a blank slate, I think, at this point. I mean, we're really kind of focused on getting our team. Kind of same thing we went to in our A-10 tournament is kind of making sure we play our game, doing what we know how to do best, kind of focusing on our strength as opposed to their weaknesses or something that we may notice about them. Obviously, we'll scout them out. We'll see what they have. We'll watch tape. We'll review everything. But it comes down to us being able to execute our game plan that we have.
Coach, best of luck in Harrisonburg against James Madison, Binghamton, and NC State. And hopefully we come out on top, and we've got some more softball coming down the stretch.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Harrisonburg, Virginia, Mother's Day, almost 10:30 p.m. We're in the Bronx, and put that all together, and you've got Fordham softball's fate headed into their 3rd consecutive NCAA tournament, courtesy of the Atlantic 10 Championship. And Matt, the 3 seed of the 4 seeds in this regional, James Madison, the 15th seeded national seed. So Fordham, doesn't have to go up against the top 14 teams in the nation, at least to start. They were to win, likely to get Oregon, but can't look that far ahead. Cannot look that far ahead yet. But a team that, would have a chance anyway, regardless of who they were playing. But personally, this regional looks very appealing.
Certainly, especially after what was just announced prior. You talk about it's the Eugene regional that will face up with this regional coming up that Fordham is in, and not that the team wouldn't have been excited no matter where they went, even if their first game was in Florida. How could you not be excited to go to the tournament? But you could kind of see it on the faces of everybody out in the crowd. Didn't want to go to Eugene, Oregon. Not only is it all the way across the country, number 2 overall seed. That is a real tough region. So you have the relief. You could obviously see it. We were here. You could hear it. You could see the relief not having to go to Eugene, Oregon. And the very next bracket, the very next regional, you're in. And it's with teams you are familiar with. And that obviously has to be an advantage. You've played NC State, and yes, you've lost that game. But you get them first. You've seen them before. But I think it's interesting, that's why I asked the question. You go into this as if you're Bridget Orchard with a blank slate. It's hard to take some of the, it's hard to look back that early in the season. Obviously it helps to go up against that competition. It helps to go up and play those kinds of teams, those kinds of players in that kind of weather that you're going to be seeing in the NCAA tournament, against the kind of programs that are used to success, getting wins against those programs, playing them tight. But it's a different animal now. That's months ago. Those tournaments, that's the very beginning of the season, and like Bridget Orchard just mentioned, a different team now is Fordham. That can absolutely be a positive thing. They've gone through the Atlantic 10, struggled a little bit early on against some of the top seeds in the Atlantic 10, but coming off this Atlantic 10 tournament for the 3rd straight season, going to the championship, it's a new team, it's a different team. You can't look too much at the previous matchup, but obviously it's in there, and I think you would rather, as we mentioned, there was going to be storylines either way it's good for us to see it because we have those storylines. But I think if you're Bridget Orchard and you're the Fordham softball team, you definitely like it if you are going up against some teams that you're familiar with in this regional. It's also close at home.
Fordham gets NC State in the James Madison Regional in Harrisonburg, Virginia. That series, or that regional, I should say, starts this Friday. Super Regionals come on after that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by on the 810 Digital Network and WFUVSports.org. And congratulations to the Fordham Rams, and best of luck as they continue their NCAA tournament run. Bob Aarons is the executive producer. Scott Kwiatkowski and Joe DeBarry and Chris Strauch have helped out today. Brendan Bowers produced this one. Matt Morrow is my partner here. So long from Campbell Hall. This is Drew Casey saying good night. Enjoy the last hours of your Mother's Day 2015. Fordham softball going to the NCAA tournament. They get NC State first.